DTFF.
Again, here's Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your host, Jake Trowbridge and Dustin Lunt.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Happy Monday if you're joining us later on instead of live right now. We switched it up a day. We got some stuff going on, so we're just like, we're dedicated. We said we're going to still do the pod. We're just going to switch it up a day. Not only switch it up a day, but switch it up an hour earlier. So
keeping everybody on their damn toes.
That's right. So if you're on the West Coast right now and you see this notification pop up, join us on YouTube while you're at work for that last hour of the day.
Happy lunch to you. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, we are doing a really fun episode tonight. We got our Dynasty mock draft here. We'll get into the details of that shortly. We're not going to waste much time on the preamble today. We just want to get right into it to maximize the number of rounds we can get in. But first, I just got to say hello to my co-host, Jake. And how are you doing this evening, sir?
Hello. I'm doing fantastic. I hear all along I thought we moved it to tonight, or my intention in moving it to tonight was so that we could call it Mock Draft Monday. But I guess now I know we could have done it any night.
I didn't get that memo. I'm sorry.
No, I'm doing phenomenal. I can't wait. This is the last mock before the NFL draft is actually going to happen. So this is before the big shakeups. So I don't know. It's just kind of nice to sit in what we know in our comfort for just one more level, one more mock before it all gets topsy-turvy.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see here with this mock where some of these rookies go in the draft, not knowing what their actual landing position is. So that's going to be really fun to see too. What are you drinking, Jake?
I have one of life's best concoctions. I have a whiskey and root beer. I don't know if you've ever partaken. If you haven't, there are not two things that go together better than whiskey and root beer, in my humble opinion. It's very nice.
Nice. I've got half of what you're drinking, and no, it's not the root beer portion. It is just whiskey. This is from Door County Distillery. It's just their whiskey. So yeah, localish whiskey. It is very delightful, very good. So I figured let's just cut out the filler and go straight to the booze here on a Monday night.
None of that mixer nonsense. We're mock drafting and we're whiskeying, and damn it, we're gonna have a good time doing both, I think.
Absolutely. But yeah, should we just get right into this, Jake, here? Switch over to the screen and
do it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm too damn excited for this. Oh, look at this. This filled out nice. We've got one lone team sitting there. We've got to have a landmine somewhere. We have one auto draft team currently sitting in here.
Yes, we do. So let me Jake, where do I go to switch up the draft order?
Do you want me to randomize the draft order here for you? Let me go ahead and do that on my end. You're doing so much already. You're doing the streaming and the whatnot. Let me randomize. Let me see if I remember how to randomize the draft settings. Draft settings. We're doing this on Sleeper, by the way. This is Dynasty Superflex. This is 12 rounds. That's what we're doing here. Boy, I got to tell you, this randomize button could not have been harder to find. I finally found it, by the way. Now I know what my wife goes through. Oh my God, terrible. How terrible for her. Took me forever to find that button to push. But I have pushed it. We have randomized. And Dustin, I'm drafting out of the 5 spot, it looks like. And you are bringing up the nice middle with the 8 as well.
Yep. And we are doing tight end premium, Superflex, correct?
It's not really tight end premium. No.
Just regular, Superflex.
Regular tight end, Superflex. We only want the sweet quarterback add-ons into this.
And then are we assuming 4-point or 6-point here for quarterback touchdowns? There's a question in the chat.
These are things that I probably should think about.
Just say standard 4-point.
This is 4-point. 4-point passing touchdown, 6-point rushing touchdown.
All right. Boom. Okay. Added that to the chat.
Already loving everybody in the chat, by the way. Let this be a lesson to you. If you ever want to just have a great time, next time we do a mock draft, folks listening out there, come join us.
That's right. Okay. Let's get this bad boy underway here, Jake. I think you have to start it since you are the owner of this draft.
I will happily do it.
Boom.
It's done. That noise means that we are underway. We've got our friend of the show, Hoove, sitting here. Wow, you almost blinded me by switching to light mode, by the way. That was
a mistake that'll never happen again.
We will see if Hoove can redeem himself from trivia night a few weeks ago. If you didn't get a chance to listen to our trivia episode, by the way, go back and listen to that. Still relevant. You can still play along with that episode. We had a great time. I know I did as the question asker. Maybe you didn't as the answer giver, but that's fine.
Okay. So Jake, before we get up to our picks here, traditionally, what is your strategy here in the first few rounds of a tight end, or not tight end, just a super flex draft?
I mean, in Superflex, I'm pretty basic. I do ideally want to have at least one quarterback through the first 2 rounds. I don't have to double up. In fact, oftentimes I won't even draft a QB in round 1. And I'm sitting here. Oh, who has started rough, by the way. We'll get it back. So there's a part of me that looks and just says, all right, is there a wide receiver that I really love in the first round? If not, I'm just probably going to take a quarterback, but there does happen to be a wide receiver that I'm comfortable with. So I'll spoil the beans here. I drafted Jamar Chase at the 105. Hoove in the chat said he misread the rules, but he will write this. So it started off with Tyreek Hill. That was an oopsie daisy. Then it went to Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I'd say that's fair. Would you have those two flip-flopped? Do you care?
It's a push. Yeah, I mean, it's really pick your flavor at that point, who you like more. In my book, they're pretty well the same.
Yeah, I would say so too. As you sit here on the clock, it then went after Mahomes, it went Justin Jefferson, and then I took Jamar Chase. I'm still trying to get that sweet, young-ish wide receiver action. Then followed up with 2 other quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts and CJ Stroud. There was a part of me that would have been okay taking Stroud, although I think his value's a bit high for me in Dynasty right now. And then you, sir, want to talk about your pick?
Yeah, it was the highest person on the sleepers board, but highest rated quarterback for me in Lamar Jackson. He's got the passing, he's got the rushing upside. I know he's starting to get a little bit older, but that doesn't concern me at all. He's still plenty young, plenty of gas in the tank. I love what they're doing. They've got Derrick Henry there. I think he's going to end up having another phenomenal season here. So that's why I took him.
Yeah, and still, again, young guy, super massive rushing upside. I think it's really hard for me to put CJ Stroud ahead of Lamar Jackson right now.
Yeah.
Hard for me to get Lamar out of my top 3.
I mean, I would say if Stroud does what he did last year again this year, like we see a solid repeat, then maybe that'd be the conversation we have. But just after one season, I'm a little hesitant to do that. I'm with you.
Yeah, I just want the guys that have the rushing floor at the very least. Stroud, that's just not really his game. But after Lamar Jackson went CeeDee Lamb, then Amon-Ra St. Brown, then Anthony Richardson. I do like that pick, but it's bold for me. And then Joe Burrow right after. And then at the turn, this was our auto drafter, taking Joe Burrow and Jahmyr Gibbs, first running back off the board. Even though that was an auto pick, is that a fair spot for the first running back to go?
I guess I still would go CMC over anybody else in the running backs. He's still the 101 in my book as far as running backs go. Until he doesn't prove it anymore, I'm okay doing that.
Well, after Gibbs went Justin Herbert, and then Tootsie Pop, aka Rachel, did follow your train of thought and took CMC at that spot. So I would say that is probably a win for you. And then right after CMC, Breece Hall, And I get the arguments for any of them. Breece Hall in a terrible offense last year still somehow put up 1,500 plus scrimmage yards. I don't know when that happened, but my goodness.
I agree, because it didn't feel like it on a week-to-week basis.
No. And I think like 1.5 touchdowns is probably what he had. So, if the offense picks up and I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out this year. Of course, a lot of questions with the Jets. And just generally, as I look at my next selection here, what's your thought process with, running backs in general? You said CMC, but are you playing basically them in a 1 to 2 year window?
CMC, absolutely. Or just running backs in general, are you saying?
I would say just running backs in general.
I would say a 2 to 3 year window. Especially the younger guys, you got your Bijan Robinson, Gibbs, Breece Hall, like these guys, you're going to get a few solid years out of them yet. So I'm usually like that 2 to 3 year window, but I do like to sell early and try to recoup as much value as I can. So if I can trade them while they still have a lot of value, even if maybe I lose a year or two of elite production, I'm okay with that. Just because I'd rather cash out while I'm ahead. And that's just the way I like to gamble, folks.
Oh, we got a big time gambler here.
No.
I like to piece my running backs together. Yeah, I just can't get myself in a startup, which is hypothetically what this mock draft would be. I wouldn't be even looking at a running back personally for the first 4 rounds. Unless like CMC is sitting there in the third, in the middle
There's
of the third.
Always exceptions. Like yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Because you really, in my personal view, you want that core of young quarterbacks, young wide receivers to build around. Running back, there's always those surprise guys every year that pop out that have a good season or are fantasy relevant. So I feel like you can kind of plug and play those guys, especially depending on your league settings. So if you only have to start one running back, why would you draft a couple super early in a startup if you only have to start one?
I dig that. Now, you, sir, took the very first rookie from this upcoming
sure did.
class. How do you feel about drafting Marv Harrison in the middle of the second there?
I love it. Just when I was looking at the running backs, I really thought about taking Bijan, but again, I kind of wanted to hold off. And Marvin Harrison, I want him back on a squad. It's been so long since I've had a Marvin Harrison on my team. It just feels right to have him. I know this is before we know where he's going to land in the draft, but he's still going to be elite. I have zero issues with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, drafting wide receivers, I think you, like me, you're drafting wide receivers for the talent, not for the landing spot. So especially in a dynasty, redraft. I get it. Redraft, you want to go with landing spot in the first year. That's fine. But not me. Ooh, my very first snipe of the draft here did happen.
Was Laporta or
it was AJ Brown that went right before me. I would have loved a triple wide receiver stack, but you don't get to have everything, folks. Also, this ADP for quarterback is just killing me right now. It is brutally out of line. I've got so many tough decisions. I'm going to go what I think is a little bit safe here, but I don't know if you'll agree. So I have a triple stack of wide receivers now with Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, and Jalen Waddle.
And you know what? That is a sexy core of wide receivers.
I thank you. It
feels
feels like
really
there's a lot of untapped potential with Jalen Waddle still at this point. Obviously, I know Hoove took Tyreek as an oopsie daisy to kick off the draft, which we just needed to have, by the way. That's a fun way to start any draft. But in Dynasty, I'm at the point now. I wasn't there last year, but I'm there now where I'm valuing Waddle over Tyreek just because of longevity. Are you there with that, at least?
I am. And I was actually going to bring that up because I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are. Where would you draft Tyreek knowing, he said he's going to retire 2025. So he's only got, a year or two left here. Would you just draft him maybe in the later first round, knowing that you're only going to get a couple elite years out of him? Or are you just not going to jump on that grenade and just avoid it.
It's too hard for me to do in a dynasty startup type of format because because he set the clock. It's not even just Father Time setting that clock.
Right.
Like now maybe he gets to 2025 and decides, I want to keep playing. Maybe I'll push it a year and play, a little bit further. But yeah, it's too hard. So it's just like with the running back thing. I don't want to draft one of those guys probably before round 4. So I would be taking Tyreek Hill in round 4, but I know I'm probably in the minority with that. So I do want to talk about this interesting stretch here. So after your guy Marv, you kicked off the rookie phenomenon just a little bit. Right after that was Caleb Williams,
which I toyed with taking him. I did. I toyed taking Caleb, but I just said no. I want the wide receiver,
which is totally valid. That's the same thing I would have done. And then after him, it was Bijan, then my Garrett Wilson. Then we got Jordan Love. There was a part of me hoping that he was going to fall into the 3rd round. Obviously, I am foolish to think that. And then Jonathan Taylor. Then we had Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Puka Nacua, Sam Laporta, and Dak Prescott. And then the A.J. Brown snipe for me. A lot of quarterbacks. And this is the game. This is the danger of doing what I'm doing, of building up a wide receiver core, because there's a strong possibility in year 1 I'm going to need to rely on some old dudes at the quarterback spot and just say, all right, hopefully I can contend year 1 with the sort of scraps that I pick up at quarterback or the short-term plays. But you, sir, I do want to talk. Obviously, you're on the clock right now, but you've started Lamar Jackson, then Marvin Harrison. You did pick up your second quarterback in round 3, Tua Tagovailoa. And now you're in an interesting position. There are some people, and I'll get your answer after you draft, probably just with this pick. So I'm guessing it's not you. But there are some people who just want to stack up on quarterbacks in a super flex format. Are you into that mode?
No, because while you have all the cards, so to speak, if you have all the quarterbacks, but you're really doing yourself a disservice with the rest of the positions. Like, you're not rounding out a team. And there's one thing to say, I want to do productive struggle the first couple seasons and, rely more on rookies and whatnot. But personally, that's not how I like to build. Yeah, it's nice to have 3 solid quarterbacks, but I don't want to spend all that early round draft capital and missing out on some of these young wide receivers, the young tight ends, and just play that game. If you love the trade and you think, hey, I can get way more for in return for these quarterbacks, then go ahead. But that's just not how I like to draft and build my squads.
Yeah, you got to love to trade, and you got to hope at least that your league loves to trade as much as you do, because if you get a stagnant league, now you're sitting here with a lot of value that is just not doing you any damn good. Now, I'm in an interesting spot right here, and I think I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to follow your rookie trend. I'm actually going to take Jaden Daniels here. Again, we don't know the draft spots of any of these guys. And arguably after Caleb Williams, it sounds like the next 3 between Jaden Daniels, Drake May, maybe even JJ McCarthy, it could be anybody's guess as to who is drafted where and above whom. But I'm going to go sort of like the wide receiver idea. I like Jaden Daniels short term because his rushing upside can play anywhere, or at least I hope that it can. Now, it could be a Trey Lance sort of debacle, and I look back in the 4th round and go, what the fuck was I doing taking this guy without a landing spot yet? But I do feel pretty confident that he lands in Washington, so I'm going to roll the dice there.
Yeah, and Jake, we had a nice little mini run of tight ends there in the 4th round with Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and Dalton Kincaid. How do you feel about those 3 going in the 4th round and just drafting a tight end that early?
In non-tight end premium, it's not my favorite new move personally, but all of those guys are so young, and any one of them I think has a legitimate claim as being the tight end 1 over, the next few years. Personally, I'll still give it to Laporta, who went a full round earlier, but McBride is no slouch. Bowers, that's the question mark because it's a rookie tight end, but again, it's Dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
You just hope it's no Pitts all over again. But I don't have any issue with it. Kincaid maybe stands out as somebody who I thought might go a little lower just because people were kind of disappointed in his rookie season, but that's more of a me problem, I would say. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, in a non-tight end premium, it's feels a little early, but again, playing Dynasty, you're locking up these young guys for the long term. I don't hate it, but it's a couple rounds too early for my blood here.
Yeah, that's my vibe as well. You know what? I'm not going to get cute. I'm going to do this. I almost never get to do this. I'm going to draft Tank Dell there in the 5th. I did want to pick your brain because you're the guy who took Nico Collins in the previous round. Mm-hmm. And part of me just wants to do this as a way to instigate yet another beer bet around the Texans. I don't think we need to do that, though. And for anybody who wanted to hear more of our thoughts on the wide receiving core specifically, last episode, we talked a lot about all 3 of those guys. Mm-hmm. Now, that was more from a redraft perspective, though.
But we did touch with Dynasty a bit on it as well. Yeah. Which is why I ended up taking Nico Collins there because knowing that Stephon Diggs is only under contract for the 1 year, there is a very good chance Stephon could move on after the season and Nico Collins is the number 1 again on that team. So that's why I did that. I love that he's young and a great playmaker. All right. Now, this next pick here, I can't believe that he's still on the board. And I am going to be very happy. It's DK Metcalf.
Oh, that's
no,
not
DK.
Yeah.
I can't believe that he has fallen this far, even in a startup. Like he's still the 1A or the 1 on a team. And I know their quarterback situation isn't great, but like you said earlier, Jake, you draft for that talent regardless of position or of team. Hope for the best. So I mean, DK is still a stud. So I can't believe that I got him in the 5th round.
Now, it is very interesting. Chuck there, who was drafted in a couple of spots before you, took Jackson Smith and Jigba. Mm-hmm. This is a little bit of a similar situation with the Texans, except JSN, of course, notoriously stuck behind Tyler Lockett last year. Tyler Lockett gets a bit of an extension. He's getting up there in age, but Tyler Lockett is a guy who's taken very good care of his body, avoided hits. That's maybe the thing that he's best known for in the league. So, he could legitimately play out another couple of years. So do you think the JSN thing is still to be determined? Or do you think he will eventually be the number 1, even though you took DK Metcalf a couple of spots later?
I don't know if he will ever be the true number 1. It could be as long as DK's there. I don't know if that's going to be a thing. I love JSN's talent. And yeah, as long as he's stuck behind Lockett, not that I'm fading him, but I'm just not quite as interested. But I think whether Metcalf or Lockett were to leave and kind of open up that position, then I'd be much more interested in JSN. But until then, I'd rather take DK straight up over JSN, even though DK is a little bit older.
Yeah, and older is so relative when guys are still in their mid to early 20s. It's not where you get that break point until 27, 28 is where I start using that as a dividing line in Dynasty. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that DK is still on the right side of that, it makes me feel aligned with you here. I will say we aligned very much with Seahawks wide receivers. We're just a little bit disaligned with the Texans ones, but that's okay. That's what makes it spicy. But the wide receivers I did want to talk about, it was a very interesting stretch here through the 4th and 5th round. So it was Drake London, who I'm a little jealous. I thought about Drake London as early as the 3rd, but couldn't commit to it.
I was really hoping he was going to make it to me in the 4th. I was a little bummed when I saw him get drafted because I was really hoping that was going to be a good solid steal.
Yeah, me too. We should have known better. But then Chris Olave right after that. Then your guy Nico Collins. And then Brandon Ayuk, who may be getting traded, maybe not. We'll see. Devontae Smith, who just locked up an extension with Philly. And then we've got Michael Pittman, I think an underrated guy, turns around DJ Moore right after him. I would actually flip the two of those guys, but the same team drafted both, so it doesn't even matter for them. And then Tank Dell, JSN, T. Higgins, a very interesting guy I do want to talk about in a little bit, DK Metcalf. Then we got Jaden Reed. Shit's getting crazy. I love Rachel for drafting Jaden Reed at that spot, by the way.
Yep.
And then
same.
Rashee Rice. Now, this is the auto draft team. There's going to be a lot of this nonsense. That auto draft team. Yeah, damn it. We just needed a 12. Rashee Rice, I think people are going to be pushing him further down with all the stuff that's happened in the news recently. Maybe not.
I don't know. There's been a lot of talk in one of my Dynasty leagues about value and whatnot, and he's still going for a late first rounder.
Ooh, that
so
is
I don't know that he's dropped a ton.
Yeah.
So I mean, getting him in the 6th round, that might be a steal.
Yeah. I could get on board with that as well. TJ Hawkinson, that team took right before him in the 5th. That's interesting. But then after Rashee Rice, we've got Jordan Addison. Then Brian Thomas, another rookie wide receiver, followed by Zay Flowers. And am I being obnoxious at this point by taking a 5th wide receiver? Maybe. But George Pickens does feel pretty valuable there to me in the 6th. This is probably where I will start doing a little bit more of a team need thing just to not make this so glaringly ridiculous. But I want to talk about your guy. So you finally took a running back.
Yep, I finally caved.
Yeah, how you feel?
And I didn't feel great about it. I'm not going to lie. He was down on the draft list a little bit, but I like the situation going into Chicago. They're going to have the rookie quarterback there. He's going to get plenty of dump offs. He is signed on as the lead back. I know it could be a little bit of a muddy backfield there, but I mean, Chicago brought him in for a reason. Obviously, they don't have a ton of confidence in the other 2 guys that they had, so that's why I drafted him. I felt like he was going to be the guy that's going to get the bulk of the work there, and I do like as much as it pains me to say it, I do like what Chicago's doing right now with that offense. So I feel like he could have a very good season this year.
I agree. I'm all in on Swift. People are scared because of the murkiness of that backfield, but I'm with you. I think it's going to be a lot of Swift. You have inspired me, I want to say. I was actually, I guess I shouldn't have been shocked that this guy was on the board still. I tend to value him pretty highly. It's Javonte Williams for the Broncos. I think
that's a nice pick. Nice pick.
Yeah. He didn't come out and do what everybody wanted him to do, obviously, last year, but that was coming off of a massive injury the year before. We've always talked about typically not drafting in redraft, at least, running backs the year after they get hurt because it's going to be such a slow climb up. And I think that's what happened with Javonte Williams, but he's still very young. He's 23 years old. For the first year, that team looks interesting, at least. We'll see who they draft at quarterback, but I think he's going to get a ton of volume at least, so I feel pretty good about him. And then after that, well, let's talk about the group of running backs. So it was Isaiah Pacheco that kind of kicked this thing off after your Swift. Then to James Cook at the tail end of the 6th. Then we got Kenneth Walker, which I completely think is a big drop there. I'm shocked he actually lasted to the 7th. And then Tyjae Spears, and then my Javonte Williams. You then, you did it. You son of a bitch, you did it.
I finally pulled the trigger, yeah. I couldn't believe George Kittle lasted this long. I know he's been in the league for a few years and he's always dinged up, but when he's on the field, he is a top 3 tight end. So give me that upside for when he's actually healthy and playing, knowing that he's going to score me points, and then I'll fill in those 3 games that he misses with, one of the other 20 tight ends you can play on any given week.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, him and TJ Hawkinson should still be drafted pretty close together, I think.
Yeah. In the 7th round, I just felt like that was way too good a value to pass up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a 2-round drop from where Hawkinson was drafted. So I think, if you're doing that type of thing, and I don't think him and Mark Andrews should even be that far apart. I've started to really temper on Mark Andrews, who was taken the round before, almost exactly
Same.
12 spots before. So, I don't know. It is hard. We're looking at these tight ends in a one tight end non-TE premium league. You were mentioning before, we got McBride, Bowers, and Kincaid going in the 4th, Hockenson in the 5th, Pitts and Andrews in the 6th, then George in the 7th. It does feel like all of them should be a little bit closer together.
So, Jake, before the pick gets back to me here, I want to just bring up here, we're kind of getting in this area where it's like team old guy for wide receivers. A lot of guys that I love, that I thought about picking in the DeAndre Swift a couple rounds earlier. You got Diggs, you got Mike Evans, you got Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp. How do you feel about these guys all falling into the 7th round, which I don't think is out of line necessarily? It's just these are guys that we've traditionally seen in the first 2 to 3 rounds for years now, and all of a sudden now they're falling off as the new crop of wide receivers and the young guys are coming in.
Yeah, it's tough because anybody, even wide receivers who tend to have the longest shelf life in the league, once they hit that threshold, I mean, you start creeping up on 30 or past 30, it's going to be very hard to convince somebody that, I'm going to go all in for 2 years of this guy unless they fall to the 7th or 8th round. I mean, Devontae Adams, as incredible as he's been and as much of a run as he's had, we say, like, don't worry about landing spot for wide receivers, but I would say the older they get, the more relevant that becomes. And I don't know that I love Vegas for Adams right now, but yeah, that whole crop. I mean, Keenan Allen that you just took, I was wondering where his name was, so I'm glad to see that you went all in on him.
I had to scroll a little bit.
Would you say out of that group? I mean, even if he didn't fall to you there, is that the guy that you would have preferred out of the crop, or do you still have like Kupp above him?
The one out of this group that I just talked about is probably Mike Evans. I'd still have Evans above Keenan Allen, but above this kind of group that's been going now, Keenan Allen's still pretty high. I just talked about this Chicago offense. I do like what they're doing there. Even though DJ Moore is the younger guy, I do think it's going to be a little bit of a 1A, 1B situation. And Keenan's still got plenty of gas left in the tank.
Yeah, and the way that he plays the position, I think we can agree that he's set up. Boy, I am in a real Sophie's Choice moment right now. This is so damn difficult, and it shouldn't be. I'm actually going to take this guy. I know I said I was going to stop drafting wide receivers. I swear I will at some point. But Deontay Johnson sitting here, and I know you love him, in the 8th round. And now I don't feel like I have to worry because I'm not double stacking those receivers of Pickens and Deontay, because Deontay is now with the Panthers. I think there was an argument when you were on the clock looking at DK Metcalf. I thought you might earnestly consider Deontay Johnson because we look at where, Adam Thielen was last year. And I know we've talked about this a bit, but first 5-6 games of last season, just absolutely crushing it as the only guy in town with Panthers. You could make the argument that Deontay Johnson is now just the younger version of that, and hopefully you see at least a couple of years. So I don't know. I felt pretty good there.
No, and I honestly, had I saw him on the list, I would have taken him over Keenan. That's just how much I love Deontay, and I love the situation. He's been a ball hog ever since he entered the league. I don't see that changing just because he moved to Carolina.
Yeah. I do agree with that. Drops be damned, everybody. I do not care about drops. There was the Sophie's Choice of it all. I had Deontay Johnson sitting there, and I love my wide receivers in a Dynasty startup. But Travis Kelce was there. And if it was tight end premium, I would have done it. But also if it was tight end premium, he probably wouldn't have lasted to that point. Is that fair to say? I mean, him being drafted right around Jake Ferguson and David Njoku. What is your stance on that for Dynasty?
I think it's fair. Will Kelce probably outperform that ADP this year for sure? I would think that's a pretty safe bet. Outside of this year, I don't know. So taking him in the 8th round, I think is fine. You're really like I said, you're going to get good money this year. You're going to get that huge return, but then after this year, I don't know. So I don't hate it. A lot of the tight ends around this part now, you're just kind of like, yeah, they're kind of all one and the same. You're going to get, top 5 tight end weeks occasionally out of them. They're going to have those blow up weeks, but they're probably going to end up in that 8 to 15 range come the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember back in the day, Trey Burton was going to be like the hottest thing in tight end land. And you draft him super high in a format like this, passing over the sure thing, and then you really regret it. Just not that long later. And there's a long list of those types of guys that you would regret drafting over Travis Kelce in this type of format even. I still feel like I got maybe a bit of a steal. I'm just going to say that about every one of my picks, just over and over again. But David Montgomery in the 9th, I don't know. It feels like we've overcorrected based on his touchdowns and just being like, well, that's all the guy does is scored touchdowns. And maybe that's true, but he's only 26. He's on a really high-powered offense. I feel like that's solid. There was a part of me that wanted to take your guy.
I know. I couldn't resist. When you're looking at the running backs that were left on the board, I really considered Eckler right there. I do think he's going to get utilized fairly well, maybe not to the degree that we saw with LA over these last, few seasons. But ultimately, I was like, give me Aaron Jones. I think the offense is a little bit more high powered, even though we don't know who's going to be quarterbacking this team right now. But, you've got a lot of other weapons there. So I think there's better upside, but it's really close.
Yeah. The upside is so there. And it's so tasty. Again, we're getting into the deep rounds here. This is why I think it does pay to wait and draft your running backs. Again, you got a combination of Swift and Aaron Jones in a full PPR format. I mean, one of the guys could still be in this league 4 years from now, crushing it. And Aaron Jones hopefully goes off on a high note for your team. That's why I think it makes a lot of sense to do it this way. Obviously, you can't punt every position, much as I sometimes would like to. I would like to draft nothing but wide receivers in the first 10 rounds, but that doesn't make for good broadcasting, I don't think.
Not the best. Let's be honest, not the best team build either. If you're really drafting a dynasty team.
Again, unless you are absolutely positive you can do a bunch of trading and your league mates will there to do it with you, but that's a very hard pill to swallow. Any other surprises running backs around this range? I mean, we've got Brooks, a rookie, going, which perfectly fine. I don't even care where his draft spot is right now. Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris, those guys all go in the 8th. Then Derrick Henry, who I'm a little jealous that he didn't fall to me a couple of spots later.
I know. Same. If he would have been available, I would have taken him in the 9th round. I would have smashed that so easily.
Yeah. And then Zach, bring me a Charbonnet. Goes, Rachel takes him a couple of spots later. Then we've got Benson, another rookie. Then we've got Zamir White, whose only competition right now with the Raiders is Alexander Madison. Arguably, I could make a case for that being the steal of the draft right now. We'll just have to see. Now you trip down, sir.
I did, and I have immediate regrets. I was just scrolling through on my phone here, looking ahead to the next round, and there's a player I saw that I would have absolutely drafted in this spot, but I'm sad. It's my first regret pick. Let's put it that way.
You got self-got on this.
I did
by taking Michael Penix Jr., which
I don't hate the pick as getting a rookie quarterback 10th round in a super flex league. Like he could turn out to be the next Josh Allen, or he could be a boat. We just don't know.
It's so true they say that because it's true. Now, I'm in a position, I have one quarterback at this point, and he's a rookie without a team at the moment. This is where I don't ever panic into doing a draft for need situation in Dynasty, but the thought does cross my mind. Like, it's a tie-breaking situation 1,000%. And if there isn't somebody who jumps off the page to me around this range, then I'm just going to be the guy who does it. Look, hopefully this 1 year, Russell Wilson looks really good with the Steelers, and I get that nice Pickens, Russell Wilson deep ball connection until Justin Fields is ready to take over the team in 2025. It's not great, but I'm fine with it.
And, let's be honest, you really got to steal because the auto draft team took Justin Fields at the 312. So right. You're really getting that starting quarterback discount by taking him in the 10th.
Suck it, auto draft.
So I will say J Money Jarrett right after me took the guy I wanted was Hollywood Brown. The fact that he was still available in the 10th round is criminal. I would have taken him. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
I would take him over Rashid Rice straight up. And he went.
Well, I think that's mostly because of the off-field issues. Marquise Brown to me is Juju Smith-Schuster on the Chiefs. Everybody gets very excited. They go over to the Chiefs. The Chiefs have a long history of doing this too. You take the guy who has underperformed. Well, Juju Smith-Schuster had the one magical season, but then otherwise kind of underperformed. And I think it's the same deal. Yeah, okay. But I think the idea, and it's not like there's risk with this, but I just think for me personally, I don't think Marquise Brown is going to be a bomb there all of a sudden. I think he could be fine. But I'm not that excited.
I feel like that is a beer bet we need to make here. Once we finish up this draft. Yeah. Because we'll have a little time before we sign off. So I feel like we should circle the wagons and come back to that.
That is fine. By the way, we're going to do a quick recap of the draft as well, kind of break down our favorite teams, look and analyze some of these picks. Hoove in the chat, by the way, did just want to throw out, he's bummed that I took Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers. I'll tell you what, I'm still not very convinced that Aaron Rodgers even plays this season. So I would rather take the guy who currently has the starting role over whatever the hell is happening over there. This guy sucks with check fast, by the way. It says Brown has caused families to break apart. Hate to see it happening here. That is what's happening with Marquise Brown, aka Hollywood. I'm glad you see that. Glad he sees that. Glad somebody does.
I guess. I will say one of the better picks, late round picks here, happened to pick right before me there in the 10th. Zamir White. Right now, he is the incumbent starting running back for that team. We obviously don't know what they're going to do in the draft, but they didn't make any moves in free agency. So they must like him. And to get a starting running back in the 10th round, love it. Yep. Absolutely love it.
Yes, and young and room to grow.
Yeah,
I do think it's sneaky. Yeah, Alexander Madison isn't scaring anybody off. I would say at this point, not even a little bit.
No.
So as we're wrapping this up, I took Luke Musgrave here. And I don't know. Am I being too much of a homer, or does it seem like I'm probably being too much of a homer? I'm now seeing that Evan Ingram went literally just the round before. I would so much rather have Evan Ingram, I think. But let me just ask you, Luke Musgrave or Tucker Kraft?
God, that's so hard because I love them both. But I think long-term Tucker Kraft is going to be the more fantasy relevant tight end.
Ooh.
Okay. I mean, I love both of them, though. I think the Packers did a great job of drafting tight ends, and they got two young great ones. But I think in the end, it's going to be Kraft.
Rachel agrees with you that it is Tucker Kraft.
Yes, great minds think alike.
I listened to our friend Coupe Fiasco, aka Andrew Cooper, over on Twitter. He's the tight end guy. I mean, he's who I certainly trust my tight end livelihoods to. He seems to think that it is maybe not definitively Musgrave, but just that we're underrating. Obviously when both were healthy, it was a very small window. Musgrave only had a few games to start and then like 1 or 2 at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But it did seem like he was on the field certainly a lot more than Kraft. But how much of that is because he's a better blocker, yada, yada, yada. Who knows? I don't know. I feel like I panicked into Luke Musgrave. I would like to take that back. Let us delete all of the picks that have come after so I can redo that.
So that is your one regret pick of the draft.
It's my one regret pick, I think, right now. So we have 1 round left. I would like to start here. So how do you feel about your team at this point for who you've drafted? I mean, we know that you have 1 regret, but in general, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay about it. Without looking too closely at the other teams and just my team, I would say my team's probably middle of the pack, maybe upper third.
Mid?
Yeah, I definitely don't think I'm one of the top drafters here that would be competing in the first year of a dynasty league.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know that I am either, to be I thought I might be with this strategy, and then I look and I have Jaden Daniels and Russell Wilson as my starting quarterbacks. I mean, it's gonna be a challenge.
It could work out. It could work out.
It certainly
could. Never know.
Anything could happen right now. And outside of the Luke Musgrave pick and the quarterback situation, I do feel very good. I like the strategy of leaning into that wide receiver core. I know you obviously can't just go through and literally draft wide receivers straight through. That would be ridiculous. But, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Tank Dell, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson. I feel very, very good about that team for at least a few years where I feel like, I'm pretty well set. And future rookie drafts for this type of team would just be heavily focused on running back, probably, or trading for short-term running backs. There are still some of those running backs out there now, in fact, that I'd be okay with.
We're only doing 12 rounds. We're not doing, as a typical dynasty startup is 24 to 30 rounds, just kind of depending on your league. So, I mean, we're halfway at best. So, I mean, there's a lot of running backs out there that are going to get work. The one I just drafted here to end my draft. Which I think is a great steal there.
I looked at his name and then all of a sudden it wasn't there anymore. And I was like, well, what the hell happened there? Did my thing refresh? No, you just fucking took him. But that's exactly the type of guy that I'm talking about at this stage in the game. Yeah, it's crazy good. I'm at the spot now where I'm just going to plan to take another quarterback just because I feel like I'm forced to. I don't like leaving, and again, as you said, this is an abbreviated draft, but I certainly don't even like leaving this short draft with just 2 QBs in a super flex format. I mean, ideally for you, do you set a number for that sort of thing, or is it still just value?
It's still value. I mean, I've come out of dynasty drafts before where I've only had one really solid QB, and then my other few are well, we'll see what happens. But because it's super flex, you can start any position. You don't have to start a quarterback in the super flex position. You can start wide receiver. You can, so it kind of really depends on how the draft falls for me.
I think that's the approach that I would take. You can't lock yourself in. I think people do that too often, and it's just you overlook value when you do. I've done that. I did that. Now, all right, we are basically wrapped up here. So if you're able to, I don't know if you even can full screen that. I don't really know how that works. I'll be honest.
I think we are about as full screen as we can get here.
All right, that's fair.
Unless I were to shrink my screen so that more can fit on it, and then you wouldn't just be able to read anything. So I don't like that.
We don't need to over shrinky dink, but I am looking through these teams as I've been doing as we've been going along, and there's a couple that really stand out to me. I think one, just because I've been on the side of Snipes, so it's easy for me to reflect immediately. But I will say Chuck's team right after mine, So started off with Jalen Hurts. Much later on, took a second QB in Derek Carr right before I took my own Daniel Jones. I will say I was hoping Derek Carr fell to me. Maybe I shouldn't make comments out loud before the picks have been happening. But, I mean, he is locked into a contract with the Saints that says he'll be the starter probably for another couple of years. So decent mid-range starter. I like that. It's got Bijan, Najee Harris, and Brian Robinson, the two B-Robs, along with Harris for his running backs. And then kind of went big just at young wide receiver with a lot of upside. Malik Neighbors, JSN, Zay Flowers, Christian Watson, Josh Downs, Troy Franklin. I think that's a very interesting and young team. And he also took Dalton Kincaid there in the 4th. Anybody that stands out to you from just either a build perspective or you just like it?
I will say I think Hoove did a great job pivoting after his Tyreek Hill 101 pick. Coming back with Kyler Murray, who's young, but then tripling down with Stafford and Rodgers, a little bit on the older side for quarterbacks, but Stafford's got a couple years in him for sure. Rodgers, a year, maybe 2, depending on what happens. He's got a couple of elite wide receivers with Tyreek Hill and Puka. Tripled up those really solid running backs in the mid rounds there. Got a discounted tight end in Njoku, which I really like. I really like what he did there.
That's nice. James Conner in the 11th, just that guy's never going to get his appropriate value from like 3 years ago on. You love to see it. I do want to call out Rachel. So Rachel's the one who kicked us off with CMC. Again, a pick that you obviously would have loved there. But the running backs is, I think, the way to go if you're going to take one of those guys like CMC first. I don't
in the second round, to be fair.
Sure. I mean, taking them first is like, you're drafting them very early. Because I think if you go with a guy like that, you don't want to double and triple down, certainly on veterans with running backs. But she waited until the 7th round then to follow that up with Ramondre Stevenson. Even though I don't love Ramondre Stevenson, the value is there for that. And then you add the young guy, Zach Charbonnet, who could overtake Kenneth Walker seemingly at any point, frankly. And then you add Chase Brown, who right now his only competition is Zach Moss. Not that Zach Moss is nothing there in Cincinnati, but he has an opening. And it's like, you don't hit that hammer 4 and 5 times. So I just want to applaud the methodology there, I think, for drafting running backs, whether intentional or not.
Yep, absolutely. But that was fun. I love a good mock draft.
Me too. Can I tell you my most surprising pick, I think?
Yeah.
Or
hit me.
The pick where I go, why the fuck didn't I do that pick? Maybe that's a better way to frame it. I don't like Calvin Ridley. And yet, Calvin Ridley was auto-drafted at the 9-12, the literal back half of the 9th. I think even that's a bridge too far that we all let him. And again, I don't even like Calvin Ridley that much, but it does kind of feel like maybe he should have gone early. Or am I crazy there? Is that?
I mean, when you look at the wide receivers that were drafted around that time, say even the round earlier with the auto draft team with Terry McLaurin, would you rather have Ridley over McLaurin straight up?
No, I'd rather have McLaurin, but it's pretty damn close because I don't love Terry McLaurin either. But and that's 2 full rounds basically difference between their value. And the guys who went in between, Keenan Allen, short term, I guess I would rather have. Deontay Johnson, I would personally rather have. Christian Kirk. See, for me in this sort of format, Christian Kirk, I think, is where I would draw the line. I'd rather have Calvin Ridley for the upside. Christian Kirk, steady Eddie. You know what you're going to get, but that's more of a redraft pick for me than Dynasty.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Woo! We did it. So what was this beer bet we were going to be doing? I forgot already. I don't recall what it was. There was a person we pointed out. It wasn't Travis Kelce.
It was Hollywood Brown.
That's right. What do we want to set the beer bet line at? By the way, anybody in the chat, you're welcome to join this beer bet In fact, we encourage it if you want to. Once we set the line here, I think we should do yards, unless you want to do fantasy points, like a delineation wide receiver X. We can do that too. You're the very pro Hollywood Brown guy, so I want you to set the line.
Oh. How about we just go straight points per game?
Okay.
We'll just do straight up points per game. That way, it kind of evens things out over the season. Because it kind of takes if you have a high touchdown season versus the yards variance out of it. Yeah. So, and we'll set the line at what? 13 games?
Yeah, for points per game, I don't even care about, unless it's like one game played.
I was going to say, you have to have some sort of line there, because like
5, we can set it at 5, frankly, and I think it's a good indicator, unless you think
that's crazy. I would no. I still think that's too short.
You're trying to cop out on this beer bet.
Oh, fine. If you want to say minimum 5 games, I'm okay with it.
Minimum 8. How about minimum 8 games? That seems reasonable to me.
All right.
Anyway,
so Hollywood Brown is going to points per game, minimum 8 games, outproduce Rashee Rice.
I don't want to do just Rashee Rice, because what if that dude literally gets suspended and then we don't even get to see the ending of this? I was thinking like suspension. Wide receiver 25 or whatever you want to call that.
Well, you set the line then.
All right, I'm going to set the line.
Come on, I set the line. You didn't like it, so now you set the line.
Yeah, that was a line. Jesus. That was a this or that. That was a this or that. I will say, let's set the line at wide receiver 25. I think that's pretty fair. Basically, is he a wide receiver 2 or better?
Yes.
Done. And you're on board.
Points per game, minimum 8 games.
Yeah. All right. Wide receiver 25 or better. I say no. You say yes. We will revisit this.
Okay. I will type that into our show sheet.
Oh, even better. Look at that.
Fill the dead space here while I'm typing, Jake. I can't do 2 things.
I wanted to stare at you while you typed that and just look at the regret on your face as you got towards the end of it.
So wide receiver,
that's fine.
Wide receiver 25 or better.
That's right. You say wide receiver 20, or I say wide receiver 25. 25 can be the push. Whatever. That's fine. If he finishes exactly 25.
Well, no, I'm just trying to, make it be accurate here. So 25 or better, and points per game, minimum.
Toronto Dave in the chat. See, Dave is used to us being an hour later with the start. That's on me. That's on me for making us start earlier. In any case, I really did enjoy this. I always love our mock draft episodes. This is always a good indicator of where shit starts. Obviously, in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be arguably very different once the rookies are drafted. We know where they are. I'm looking forward to the draft. Just selfishly, as a Packer fan, I can't wait to see what kind of wild, dumb shit we do.
Well, not only that, but I just love to see what NFL teams think of these rookies. And it's going to shake up the landscape here, because there's going to be those surprise trades, those surprise picks, where guys, we're talking offensive fantasy relevant players here. They're going to go to teams that we're not expecting. And I just love the chaos that ensues because of it.
Goddamn right. Love it. All right. Let's get out of here. What do you say?
Oh, I suppose that was a great show, I have to say. I was trying to think of another great adjective, but great just keeps coming out of my mouth, and I'll say great one more time before we head out. But yeah, thanks to everybody that joined us in the mock draft this evening. It was a lot of fun. I couldn't monitor the chat too much as I had the screen up for the YouTube video here, but I know Jake was in the chat, so looks like it was going pretty good there. So thanks to everyone that joined us. We couldn't have done it without you. It would have just been a bunch of auto drafted teams, which would have sucked. So yeah, big shout out to all you guys for making this work. As always, folks, go out, give us a rate and review, subscribe to us, all that good stuff. I don't need to go into detail about it because you've heard it a couple hundred times at this point, let's be honest. And we should be back next week on our regularly scheduled day and time Tuesday at 6:30 Central Standard Time, which is the best time zone, to be honest. And yeah, we'll just see y'all next week. Peace out.
Cheers, FFers.